Hello, this is an E.Y.E Cybermancy sort of tutorial for the basics of E.Y.E Cybermancy. Um, this game has been on sale for a long time. It's been on sale multiple times for even under $5 most of the time. And people have picked up this game and they're immediately greeted by this character creation menu and they don't know what is going on. There have been a lot of stories about, or testimonials by people who, got the game at launch and don't know what was happening, don't know really what was going on. They got confused and they kind of dropped it because nothing was explained. But things have changed since launch. There have been multiple patches out. There have been quite a few reworks of things, and I figured I'd go over the game just to give you a basic understanding of what's going on. So, the first thing to understand is the stat system here. The easiest way to gain any understanding is to go ahead and mouse over things. You can see at the bottom left hand corner you'll have a box which is updating based on what you mouse over on this right hand side of the skills section. So these are your basic attributes essentially. Each of these will modify your damage with certain weapons or your ability to it'll allow you to get past certain stat requirements in certain items or psionic powers, stuff like that. They'll influence your health, your stamina, and other basic things, your resistance to certain damages, stuff like that. So, to get things started off, the most useful skills generally are endurance because it directly changes the player's health, the player's stamina, which is essentially their mana and also their stamina. If you want to run, you got to go ahead and use stamina. If you want to go ahead and use a skill like a psionic power, you're gonna use stamina. It's universally used. No class goes without using it, especially at high level play where things tend to kind of mesh together. You may start out very specialized, but generally by the end game, you're pretty generalized because of how the game works. But endurance not only increases your health directly as well as your stamina, but it lowers the amount of energy used by any action that requires stamina. So, sprinting, that's completely reduced by an increased endurance. So it's very useful to have a high endurance early on if you want to have a very easier or if you want to have an easier end game. It's useful to have a high endurance at the beginning because endurance doesn't stack on itself like in other RPGs. For instance, the Elder Scrolls series, if you have a good amount of endurance early game, you gain a percentage of your endurance in health every time you level up. Here it's just, if you have 25 endurance, you have this much health. If you have 26, you get, I think, 2 more health per point in endurance. So just having a good early amount of endurance gives you a good baseline health, and it also gives you a good amount of reduction to all of the stamina usage your skills require. So if you want to go the mage route later, you're flexible to do that. If you want to run around and do a whole bunch of running and gunning, you can go ahead and do that. It gives your character a lot more flexibility. Hacking can also be a very important skill because as far as skills go in the game, hacking is one of the least player skill orientated or kind of influenced skills around. Even if you're incredible at the hacking minigame, it won't really matter that much. Hacking, as far as this game goes, is mostly about just basic numbers in terms of skills. So if your skill in hacking is say 20 or God forbid 14, you're not going to hack anything other than what is specifically needed to be hacked by to progress through the level. There are a couple enemies or AIs that have that, but having a high hacking skill allows you to go ahead and hack enemy units or turrets, for instance, which are some of the hardest foes in the game to hack. They also allow for the hacking of ATMs, which give you a huge monetary bonus, very popular in co-op matches where you're going through co-op campaign or even co-op missions. But there are a few levels where you actually get to hack ATMs, so it is a limited skill. It is arguably pretty fun to hack an enemy and possess them so that you see through their eyes and command them to shoot their allies. But admittedly, it is one of the least efficient ways of killing enemies. So, aside from that, endurance and hacking have a huge importance. It's really a toss-up between strength, Cyforce, and agility. Um, Agility, as far as general usage, makes you go faster, makes you, and also allows you to have a higher attack rate with melee weapons. So it's very useful for a sort of fast, close quarters melee character. But it's it's not like it's going to make or entirely break your character. There are other ways to get around a low agility score. Cyforce is it's pretty much necessary if you're going to do anything with psionic skills. So, making clones of yourself, going ahead and teleporting to an enemy and making them explode into a cloud of blood and red mist, that's going to be necessary. It's a stat requirement for certain psionic skills. You're going to need it. Having a higher Cyforce influences the amount of clones you go ahead and summon when you use a certain spell. It influences the amount of damage you do with certain spells. It's anything you do with psionic skills is going to be influenced by it. So if you want to go that route, you are going to need a high Cyforce at some point. You may not need it initially because Cyforce skills are pretty expensive and also require some ridiculous other stat requirements that aren't easily attainable early game. But late game, they are important, so you can't just ignore it completely. If you want to go down that route, of course. Strength gives you a higher carry weight, and it also influences the attack power of your melee hits. Carry weight is important because you can easily scurry away from a fight or get into one with a high speed. And if you're going to go the whole melee route, strength and agility are both very important. But if you're going to play on a high difficulty especially, you need to wear heavy armor, which greatly impacts your speed. It can easily reduce your speed by just 40% for wearing the heaviest armor in the game. So having high strength essentially bumps up your max carry weight. It goes ahead and says, nah, that heavy armor only requires 20%, 10%, 0% of your max speed to go ahead and equip. So it can be very useful. Things that are usually absolutely useless are mental balance. Mental balance is almost always low tier. It stops you from having auditory and visual hallucinations, as well as becoming stressed. Every once in a while, your character will go ahead and gain one of these sort of disabilities temporarily, and you won't be able to attack. You'll hear things, you'll see things that aren't there. You have to go ahead and press the V key, I believe, by default, to go ahead and attempt a system repair of your character. And if it's successful, which it usually is, it goes ahead and completely removes those effects. So, overall, it just lowers the rate at which those effects occur, and those effects aren't that detrimental even at a low, say like 15 value of mental balance. Medicine is also questionable because medicine, as it says in the description, defines the player's ability to administer first aid and other care to himself and team players. What this essentially means is that when you get the med kit, which is one of the starter items that you're recommended to get, you don't need to, but it's one of the starter items you're recommended to get, it influences how much you can heal at a time. So for instance, your med kit heals you, and once you use it, there's a timer that goes all the way to 0, and then it counts back up to a certain value. That value is influenced by your medicine skill, and the higher the value, the more you're able to heal. You are able to heal greater amounts of health with a max charge on your med kit. You also are able to heal greater amounts even with lower charges. But overall, that becomes more and more sort of useless late game. The I guess, scaling of the medicine effect isn't that great that it's necessary. Another, and this is very arguable, skill which you can kind of skip on initially is accuracy, because accuracy doesn't define really how accurate your guns are going to be. It defines damage, and it defines also the chances of causing bleeding damage in enemies when using a gun, say for instance. Um, so the even with a score of 10 in accuracy, when the max is well over 100, you can easily hit enemies. It's not an issue. You can crouch and burst fire, and you will go ahead and hit enemies very easily, even with weapons that should be close range, at pretty long ranges. Very rarely will you ever even have the amount of space open to you that you will be required to hit an enemy at long range. Only at endgame will it really be a factor, and by then you could pretty much pump up your accuracy. So, things to note is that an early score in endurance is very helpful. An early score in agility, strength, or psi force can also be helpful if you want to go a very specialized route. An early score, a high score of course, of mental balance, medicine, or accuracy isn't necessarily as great as you would think. So the next question is, how do I change my scores? If you click on genetic fusion, it re-rolls your character. This roll is essentially random, but it is biased in the effect of what genes you have. So each gene affects what you're most likely to get. So for instance, for Bina, which is or Bina, however you pronounce it, which is the stock kind of gene, you have a medium bonus to hacking, medicine, and mental balance, which means you're more likely to have a high medicine skill, a high mental balance skill, and a high hacking skill. Of all of my skills, those three are the most, advanced in terms of skill level. So you can see that it sort of works, but you get a detriment or a low malice to strength and endurance, and you can see that strength and endurance are highlighted in red here. This basic stat overlay shows what your character will be given your current roll. So if I roll again by clicking genetic fusion, the numbers change a bit, and if I keep doing it, you can see that the trend overall stays the same. Strength and endurance are given a detriment, or given a con essentially, and they will always stay low unless I change the gene setup I currently have. So you can make slightly specialized skills by doing this. There's also Yesod and other skills or other genes like this which influence skills. But basically genes can be broken down into one of three types. There are the types like Yesod and Bina, which go ahead and give you a medium bonus and a low malice. So they give you a medium bonus to certain skills and a low detriment to other skills. Then there are things like Kether, which give you a high bonus and a high malice. These skills allow you to create incredibly specialized classes based on how you combine things. So if I want, 3 Kether genes, I would have enormously high bonuses to certain skills and enormously high malices to others. As you can see, I have 58 as my agility score, which is almost, I think, the max you can get with for a starting ability. And I get enormously low accuracy, mental balance, and medicine skills. So you can see that things are definitely influenced by this. The other type of gene that you have is the truly random, which are the Metastrum and normals. So Metastrum, for instance, goes ahead and gives you very high bonuses and very high malices for everything at random. So it's possible that you will have a very bad character, or like in this case, you'll have a character who is above average in almost every single skill. It isn't, it's random, so it's entirely, this is essentially as close as you can get to rolling a die for your actual character skills, but another one in this type is normal, which is essentially the same in that it promotes random skills, but it gives a very low bonus and a very low malice. This will give you a character who is very close to the average. And as you can see in this, the average for most skills is 30. When you have hit the average for a skill or the normal value for a skill unedited, it will appear in yellow. So karma and hacking in this case are shown in yellow, showing that they are actually average. Any skill shown in green is above average, and for every skill from strength down to agility, 30 is the average. Critical hit, superhuman reflex, karma, and health have slightly different averages, so the normal values for them are different, but this is an easy way to see how good your character is. So this character is, by and large, aside from superhuman reflex, above average, just barely, because most things are within the 30 range. You can see that if I continue to randomize the rolls, it mostly sticks to this trend. There aren't a lot of values that are either under or above 30. Nothing really gets into the 10s or 40s mark in terms of skills. But if you wanted to go a very easy route, spamming Kether is pretty easy. You're given the option to go ahead and have a very high endurance, a very high psi force, which is useful if you want to go ahead and pursue the sort of quote-unquote mage route in this game. You also are given a great agility score, which means that you can move fast, you can attack fast if you want to go ahead and pursue the melee route. If you don't know what you want to do in this game, it's a pretty safe bet. Like I said before, accuracy isn't affected that hard, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. But through continuously reselecting genetic fusion, you can go ahead and get random scores where certain skills are easily above, say 50. Like for instance, with this one, which will be very useful for this demonstration, my endurance is above 61. So I'm going to go ahead and go OK this character. It should be noted that this will not be focusing on story, so I will be talking over subtitles, and I won't be getting very far into the game. So one of the first things to notice is that if you hold down C, you will get an action wheel. If you move your mouse down, you will get an arrow that points down to the config select panel. If you let go of C, you're given this little options menu. This is the easiest way to access your kind of menu system for your character. There are various different tabs, but I'll try and explain them as easily as I can. So, for instance, for character tab, you can mouse over a skill and go ahead and see what their current influence is. So, for instance, with strength, my melee damage is I get a bonus of 6.5, and it reduces my speed malice when I equip heavy armor or a heavy weapon by 13%. If I were to upgrade this by 1 point, you could see that next level for the skill is shown. That next level in brackets shows what the skill will be once I upgrade it with to the next level of that skill. So you'll see that most of the skills on here don't have a number in parentheses next to them, but endurance does, because it's at 61. 61, and I think occasionally 62, are both turning points for skills here, because you gain 3 skill points, noted up here, every time you level up. So when I level up, I will have 3 skill points. I could sink 3 of those into strength, and I would level it up 3 times. I could sink 2 of those into endurance and level it up once. The 2 in brackets next to the endurance skill indicates how many skill points you need to actually level up that skill 1 level. So, as you can see, it's kind of a detriment to go ahead and level up a bunch and then waste your skill points on leveling up something that is very hard to level. Why level up, endurance twice within 2 overall level ups, or 3 times, sorry. 3 times. Why level up endurance 3 times with 2 level ups when I could level up, say, strength 6 times within those 2 level ups that I get. So that brings me to Cybertech, which is essentially late game perks. It's not broken down so easily, but for instance, if I go to Cyber Arms, It gives a strength bonus of 1 with every level up I put into this. And the cost of this isn't experience. It's not the same currency, essentially. It is your actually, it's like credits, or as the game calls it, brozovs. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's money, essentially. You pick it up every time you kill an enemy. So, it's very easy to level these up, and it's very enticing to go ahead and pour your money into these cyber skills. But if, let's say, you level this up 3 times, you gain 3 strength points. That's fine and dandy, but let's say I had a character with 61 strength. Instead of putting, 3 levels into going ahead and leveling that, 2 or 3 levels into going ahead and leveling strength up 3 times, I could just go ahead and, put some money into this cyber tech. It is a very useful sort of perk system, and if you want to sort of min-max, which, some people don't, some people do, it's up to you, then this is best saved for late game. There are other cyber tech which exclusively, do not alter your stats by a static number, which is great. For instance, Cyber Legs goes ahead and multiplies speed and jump height. It gives you a leg protection bonus, which isn't really that important, and it gives you a speed bonus and reduces, the sound you make when you go ahead and move through stuff. But none of this affects, your agility skill or anything like that. You can get this as early as you want. It's ludicrously expensive compared to everything else, but it is one of the better and most useful, I should add, skill or cyber techs to go ahead and get. Being able to jump higher and run faster, not just by, a certain speed, but by a set multiple of that speed, is very useful. If I up my agility, 3 levels or something in a level, then my speed point goes up, because agility affects, speed, as shown on this screen. And then if I have this upgrade, because it multiplies the speed bonus, it is very useful. It transfers to a great amount of speed regardless of what I do with my agility skill. It is tremendously useful, and it's the same with the jump height. You can easily get to places that you normally couldn't, or could get to places much faster. So you're able to quickly traverse through things. It makes the game a lot less tedious, and allows for quicker gameplay, because you can go ahead and quickly sprint to an enemy if you want to use melee weapons, for instance. So, one of the final things before we really get started is research. And research is, I guess, you can think of it like almost research in StarCraft or another RTS. You have an item, and you start with 2, I believe, Cormac's algorithm and the medkit, which you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen. The medkit is arguably one of the better researches in the game. You start with it because it gives you a way to heal yourself with no real downside. You just have to wait a bit between healings, which is great. It's the only way to gain health, really, without losing anything. So it's one of the most useful researches in the game. And the only thing you can do is launch search, abort search, and differ the amount of scientists put onto it. So with 0 scientists, it costs 1,500 brozovs, and it takes 1 day in-game time, not like an actual day, to go ahead and complete. 1 day is equivalent to about 4 minutes. With 100 scientists on, it is 9,000 brozovs and takes 12 hours. So it takes half the time but costs 6 times the amount of money to go ahead and research. For this reason, it is almost always recommended that you put it down to zero, researchers. Yes, things will take 22 days when you get to the end of the game and you're going for the highest level research items possible, but it's almost never worth the amount of money you have to pour into things. to go ahead and research them that much faster. As you can see at the top, I have almost nothing in terms of Brozos, so I'm going to have to get into game relatively quick here. I'm just going to run through the level a bit and give you a taste of combat as well. So this will give you sort of an introductory look at the first level of this game, and maybe it'll give you a little bit of a sense of how you want to play the game. Granted, I don't have many weapons available, and I don't have many psionic skills available because I have literally just started the game. But maybe you can decide for yourself what you want to do. So there will be limited attention paid to dialogue, and also the sort of tutorial menus. So that right there was a psionic skill that creates clones of yourself. It's one of the things you start with. You can see at the bottom right hand corner to the right of my red, yellow, and green bars there's a circle, and right now it should be changing. This is indicating what skill I have currently selected. So for instance, if I keep pressing X, which is my personal bind, I'm not sure if it's the actual normal, it'll change between the various skills I have, which at current is only 2. One summons clones, which is this one, and one goes ahead and transfers ammo or items like a gun into health at the cost of energy. And like I said before, a high endurance score will go ahead and reduce the amount of energy required by almost every action, whether it be a power jump like this, or a sprinting or a psionic skill. So certain things are very useful, and they're a little bit kind of biased early game. This is the armory, so I can go ahead and select any weapon I want from here. Certain ones are locked out because I either haven't researched them or I haven't purchased them with money. Some have to be, when I say researched, some have research requirements where you have to research certain items before you are able to buy them. Some also have status requirements where you need to have certain stats to a certain level before you can require them or acquire them. So general safe bets for guns are the SMG, the Kron, or Kroon, however you want to pronounce it, I don't know. It has a firing mode which is incredibly fast and allows it to go ahead and fire at extraordinarily fast rates, and if you burst fire, it is still very, very accurate. Another one is the dual pistols, which I'll be using for kind of shits and giggles. They are able to go ahead and fire in automatic mode, which is very useful. And they're really a step above the single pistol. There isn't a lot of reason to use the single pistol unless you want to. Later on in the game, there are better pistols. For instance, if I had a higher accuracy, I could afford this revolver, though it's not really necessary early game. And one of the best guns in the game is actually this other revolver, which you can buy from the item shop. It is literally one of the best guns in the game, but it has certain stat requirements that you would never be able to fill out, regardless of how you distributed your genes and skills. So you'd have to wait at least a few missions before you could get it. As far as weapons go, the Damocles, the two-handed sword that we have here, is pretty interesting. It allows you to go ahead and anytime you hit an enemy with it, that enemy explodes into a kind of fireball. So it's very sort of interesting in tight quarters. I'm going to go with the dual swords for reasons that will be hopefully shown pretty quick here. Other useful weapons are the grenades. They are actually quite useful, so if you want to pack a couple on you, they're good for taking out hard targets like turrets. They knock them over pretty easily, and they take out infantrymen pretty easily as well. The minigun is absolutely useful. It is useful to the end game until you've unlocked other heavy weapons with that revolver it is extraordinarily useful. It has a huge magazine capacity and also gives you a good amount of accuracy and a devastating amount of firepower. As far as assault rifles go, they really are kind of underpowered relative to other things. They're, if you want a medium range weapon for, tight cityscape kind of levels, then they will do perfectly fine. But a sniper rifle, if you have good aim, or a shotgun would do just as well, realistically. There are very few situations where you need to really worry. Speaking of shotguns, the Depesador is very useful. Its magazine capacity is 32 fucking rounds, so it's extraordinarily useful. You will never have to reload almost. It's a great weapon, and because this is built off of the Source engine, it is extraordinarily accurate. The other thing to note is that my speed mouse is currently at 5. I am in light armor, so when I switch to heavy armor, for instance, my speed mouse goes up a ton, as you can see. It goes up almost 40%. This is based off of my current strength, so, if I had a higher strength, it would cut off a certain percentage of this speed mouse, and if I really wanted to, I could go ahead and equip more stuff, and it would go ahead and up my overall kind of speed mouse until a certain point. I believe it's about 80%. So having a high strength allows you to equip more heavy weaponry, but to be honest, it usually isn't used in that sense. It's usually used to go ahead and just equip the same weaponry, but move even faster. So a quick show off of the weapon is, this is single fire. You can probably hear my mouse clicks because of my crappy microphone, but if you go ahead and select, normal, the automatic firing rate, it is obviously pretty accurate, even though it is at an automatic firing rate. So it's not like accuracy, despite the fact that I have a low one, isn't really that important. I can go ahead and hit enemies. It's not a big deal. Ow. Fucking asshole. Clones are also liable to shoot you, as you may have seen there. I got shot in the back by my own clone. Not an enemy, in fact. And as long as you fire in bursts, you're really not that pressured as far as accuracy goes. So, I mean, accuracy is well and good if you're going to, spam down attacks like your Rambo, but if you have any mind about you, you can go ahead and sort of circumvent any consequences of having a low accuracy with the weapons you have at hand. Accuracy is used as a means to keep you out or restrict you from buying higher end weapons. So if you wanted, like, the best gun in the game, you would need a good accuracy. It's required. But certain weapons, like an automatic shotgun, wouldn't require that of you. They wouldn't really even need you to have a good accuracy. I don't even think the automatic shotgun has an accuracy requirement. But it's just kind of to show you that not everything is based off of accuracy. Just because the main weapons in this game are guns doesn't mean that you're required to have a great accuracy. Oh, hello. I think currently I'm on normal difficulty, but it's not a really big deal. I've played multiple times on Ghost difficulty using all sorts of ridiculous class combinations, and it's not a big deal. So really the main thing to worry about on harder difficulties is the fact that you need to wear heavy armor, and you need to know a little bit about the game, like where enemy spawns are, if you're going to consistently live through levels with little to no deaths. Okay, so for the final explanation here, before I go ahead and go off, I'm going to show off levels one more time, and I'm going to go ahead and show off hacking. So as you can see, I have 9 skill points. If I go ahead and upgrade my endurance one time to level 62 from level 61, it brings me down to 7. It required 2 skill points. That is important to note because it's fucking expensive to do anything else. If I say wanted to upgrade my, agility. I could upgrade it 7 times and not have to give a crap about it. It's until you hit that 61 or 62 level mark in most skills, you will not have to worry about paying double for the skill on level ups. So, going to research actually. I now have enough money to go ahead and research the medkit. So I'm going to launch the search, and you can already see it's gone down 1 hour. This will be done within a few minutes. It'll probably, tick to 22 hours remaining within a couple seconds, like right there. It, as I said before, it takes about, 4 minutes for a single day to pass, so 24 hours. Aside from that, I'm going to show off hacking here. So when you go into this radial skill menu, you can go ahead and select certain items to be hotkeyed. So I right-clicked on certain items and chose hacking to be hotkeyed, so now I can just access it like that. The only target available is this secure door. You can see my stats and my target stats. My target stats, as in this door, are incredibly lower than mine. They're biased that I will succeed no matter what. So you have a couple different options here. Hack is almost the one you're always going to choose. Possess goes ahead and gives you a bonus, but it's generally used to go ahead and take over an NPC. Like you can't control your own player character, but you're able to control another NPC during that time frame. So that's why you're given a bonus, because your body is still liable to be shot or damaged. And you don't have perfect control either, to be quite honest. You can destroy enemies, so it says here, for doors and stuff like that, it might just accomplish the same thing as hacking. You can steal energy from enemies, but for this, we want to hack. The most efficient way to hack is to overflow, scan, and then attack. So as you see, it kind of won there, but the way in which this hacking minigame works is the damage you do to your opponent is your attack minus their defense. So their defense is just completely subtracted from your attack power, and that's how much damage you do. You can't do negatives, you can't heal them and stuff like that, but you can easily do 0 damage. And this becomes important because the AI will almost always try to go ahead and limit your attack or raise their defense to the point where you do 0 damage. So if you overflow, which gives you a enormous bonus to attack at the cost of your own defense, then you are buffing your attack so quickly that the AI freaks out and ignores attacking you and just tries to sort of debuff you, as it were. The same thing happens with scan. Scan reduces sort of target defense, so they won't, if they're upping their own defense instead of debuffing your attack, then they will go ahead and have their defense reduced, which is very useful. So that's pretty much it for the rest of this game. There are weapons to go ahead and purchase. There are all sorts of other things to have fun with. But you should know the basics now. There's research to be researched. Each of those gives out basic upgrades. So for instance, my research is now over, as it says at the top left. If I went to an armory again, I would be able to go ahead and get a medkit out of the armory. There's not much else to say about this really. So hopefully this cleared up something at least, and gives you a better insight on what to do. If you want explanations on the story, well, you're going to have to look somewhere else, because the story actually gets pretty complicated now that they patched in a new ending. So enjoy your 4 endings of the story. Hopefully you get to them. And that's it for me. Good luck playing.